everybody, welcome back to my channel. Please excuse the wet hair, but I gotta tell you about these books I read. So I read 7 books in the month of January, which is pretty good. I'm feeling good about that. I kind of talked about this in my 2024 goals video and bullet journal setup video. My goal for this year, my reading goal is 60 books, but I'm really not going to be super stressed about meeting that goal. It's just, it was my goal last year and I feel like it was a good goal. So, reading 7 books, I'm like, yeah, that's a good amount. But it's not something that I'm like, oh, if I read less than that, it's a bad thing. You know what I mean? Especially because I'm about to have a child and that could either make me read way more because I'll be up in the middle of the night and that's how I stay awake breastfeeding, or read way less. We will see. We will see. But we're starting off strong in January with 7 books, so let me tell you about them. The first book that I read was Dune by Frank Herbert, Dune number 1. I gave this book 4 stars, right? Yes, 4 stars. And I enjoyed it. I think the world building is really cool. I read it because I watched the movie. To be honest, I watched the movie and I was like, this is awesome. I want to read the book. And I did enjoy it. It's a little bit... There were some times throughout the book that it was a little sluggish for me. It was a little bit hard to get through. It's pretty intense world building, and so it's kind of confusing, and there's a lot of jumping around, and there's also jumping around of timelines, which makes things a little bit confusing at times. But overall, I think the world building was really cool, and it's a really cool concept. I will say, I saw a review on Goodreads where someone was saying, this is more of a space opera than a sci-fi. Space opera is a, soap opera set in space, where it's a drama, it's family drama, it's political drama, more than sci-fi, and I was kind of hoping for more of a hard sci-fi lean, but the politics are really cool, and I was invested in what was going to happen. So if you like a lot of political intrigue and a lot of drama, this is probably a good book for you. And the religious aspect of it is also very interesting. So that was Dune number 1. Then I read Dune number 2, which is called Dune Messiah. I gave this one 3.75 stars. I didn't like it as much as the first one. It made me really question if I liked Paul as a character. He's the main character. And I was really wishing that there was more of the relationship with him and Chani, and I don't know how much more I can say about it without spoiling anything, because obviously, it's the second book in the series. There is a lot of espionage stuff happening in this one, which I thought was interesting, and the whole first half of the book focused on that a lot, and then I feel the second half of the book, it just didn't matter anymore. And so I was wait, what? I don't know if I'll continue reading in the series. I started reading the 3rd one, and I got 20 pages in, and I was I don't really want to do this. It just wasn't as interesting to me as I kind of hoped it would be. So that was Dune Messiah. We will see. We will see. I am planning on watching the second Dune movie when it comes out. I'm actually really excited for it because I really loved the movie. I think they did a great job with it. But the movie also only covers the first half, maybe 3/4 of the first book. And there's a whole nother big thing that happens in the end of the first book that's not in the first movie. And so I kind of think that the second movie is going to be more focused on the end of the first book and less on the second book, if that makes sense. So I am going to be watching that, and I'll let you know how I feel about it in some video sometime. We'll see if my flame for Dune is reignited after watching the second book, or watching the second movie, I mean. The 3rd book that I read this month was My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You That She Is Sorry by Frederick Bachman. This book is so sweet and so pure and so precious. I gave it 4 stars. Basically, you're following this little girl named Elsa, and her grandma is her best friend, and she's kind of crazy, and then she passes away. And she leaves Elsa a series of letters to give to people to apologize to them. And it's kind of, they're all connected, and you learn different things going out it, but it's really, you're following Elsa in her journey of learning that her grandmother was not as perfect as she thought she was, and that she made mistakes, and kind of that the process of being a kid and realizing that somebody that you idolize makes mistakes and then still loving them and getting past that. And I love Frederick Bachman's writing. I have loved pretty much every single book I've read by him. I've loved. I thought it was really great, and this is no exception. I really, really enjoyed this one. The only reason that I knocked it down a star is because there is basically, the grandmother has this stories that she tells Elsa, the granddaughter. It's the land of almost awake, and she's like built this whole civilization, and she tells these stories to help her get through her anxiety and fall asleep and stuff. And there was a little bit too much of that, where it was like, oh, and the this and this and this and this and this and this and this in the land of almost awake, and I was like, okay, but what's happening in real life right now? Because I care about that more. And so that was the only reason that it was knocked down a star for me, but it wasn't enough for me to like not like the book or anything. I still really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, the next book that I read was Unwell Women, Misdiagnosis and Myth in a Man-Made World by Eleanor Cleghorn. I gave this book, what did I give it, 4 stars? Yes. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a nonfiction and is basically going through history, talking about various stories and the historical context of women being misdiagnosed and ignored and mistreated medically, and how women today are still fighting for medical attention, I guess you could say, and how women's medicine is underfunded, under-researched, and often ignored. And I read this book because of Allison Pages here on YouTube, Allie. I love her videos, by the way. I highly recommend them. She also has chronic migraines, something that I have as well, which makes me feel seen. And she talks about them, which I really appreciate. And she recommended this book, and I'm really glad I read it. It's kind of infuriating, I'm not gonna lie, because you're reading story after story after story of these poor women saying, hey, something is wrong, and the doctor's just completely ignoring them or just being like, oh, you're hysterical, have a lobotomy. What's really sad, what made me really sad and angry reading this book was how much I related to some of these stories when it's 2024 and I'm relating to how these women are feeling back in the 1800s of just being completely ignored and not believed. I have had migraines since I was 9 years old. I kind of talked about this on my Instagram a little bit. If you want to follow me, you can over there. But yeah, I've had migraines since I was 9, and I have been to doctor after doctor after doctor who has really been condescending and not listened to me, asked me if I'm really in pain, if I'm exaggerating, and been very dismissive of my pain and how I feel. And that is so frustrating and so angering as a human being, to be told that your pain isn't real or doesn't matter or isn't significant enough for them to do anything. And I was actually reading this book while I was going through the process of getting into a neurologist. I got into the neurologist. I didn't have high hopes because none of the neurologists I've seen have listened to me or helped me. And it was no different. It was no different. This woman looked me in the eyes and said, I can't do anything for you because you're pregnant and you hope to breastfeed and you don't want to be on hormonal birth control. And it's like, basically, I can't give you a prescription as a Band-Aid, so I'm not going to do anything to help you. I'm not going to look into your case any further. And then she was really dismissive of some other things that have happened, and basically told me I was exaggerating. And it was just so angering. I was furious. I was like, I fought to get into this doctor's appointment, and you completely ignored everything that I had to say to you. And so it's just like, it makes me feel angry. And it's hard. And, I know that I do not have it as hard as other people, which doesn't make my pain invalid, by the way. I'm just saying, I recognize that other people also have it hard and more difficult than I do. But yeah, I think this book was a valuable read. I didn't agree with everything the author said, which is why I gave it 4 stars. There was some stuff in there that I didn't quite agree with, that I didn't see in a positive light that she did see in a positive light, but that's bound to happen. But overall, I thought it was a very educational read, and yeah, I think that if you are a woman who has chronic pain, or if you have a woman in your life who has chronic pain, this is a great book to read. It might just make you very mad, but I think it's worth it. The next book that I read was The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I had some really good reads this month. All had pretty high ratings. So this book, you are following 2 main characters. One is a girl from, it's called The Dust, basically the civilization outside of the city, and her hometown gets attacked and she's brought into the city and taken into the library. And then also following a young man who has lived in the library his whole life and is trapped there, and kind of the way that they connect and various things. This book is kind of hard to explain very much about it, to be completely honest. But basically the civilization, the library, is like the highest form of currency in the sense that knowledge is power. And you are following there's a lot of political intrigue in this book, and you're seeing kind of how things are shaping out. There's like a war that is, threatening to happen, but then you're also following this kind of coming of age story. And I thought it was really, really, really intriguing. And honestly, so here's why I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 stars. I had a hard time wanting to pick it back up, and I don't know why exactly that was, because when I was reading it, I was like really interested and I really wanted to know what was going to happen next. But then I would put it down and I would just be like, I don't really want to read, and that could be because I read it physically. I read on my phone a lot because I like to use Libby, and I don't buy books that often, and it's just easier to read on my phone a lot of the times. And so reading like this is like a thick hardcover, it's more physically uncomfortable to read, so I don't know if that contributed, and it very well could have. But once I got further into it, I was really, really intrigued. I was like, I really want to know what is going to happen and how this is going to end, and it does end on like a total cliffhanger, and the ending is crazy. And so I'm excited to read the second book. It comes out this spring, I think in April maybe. But yeah. Oh, the other reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, which is an important note, is that this book says the F word so much. It's unnecessary. And most of the time I was like, this really doesn't need to be in here at all, so why is it? And there was like an extreme amount of it in some places. And so, I don't mind a swear word here and there, but when it's like all the time, it's annoying to me, and I just don't like it. So that brought down a star for me. Okay, my child just woke up, so I gotta wrap this up a little bit faster. The next book that I read was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I gave this book 4 stars. This is actually a reread for me. I read it at the end of 2022, and I just heard so many people talking about it again that I was like, I should reread that. Which is, I like rereading books, but I don't reread like modern books, more recent reads, I guess, that often. But I just was in the mood to, so I did. This did solidify itself as a 4 star for me and not a 5 star, just because, again, there's a lot of swearing that I kind of had forgotten about, that I was like, why? It's just, we don't need to do that. There is also one sex scene. It's super easy to skip past, but I don't like smut. I've said this before. I'm not a smut girly. I don't think it's necessary. It doesn't need to be in any book for any reason, to be completely honest. And so I just was like, ugh, gross. And just I was reading on my phone. This was me. You know what I mean? So yeah. But this book, you are following a woman named Mika Moon, who is a witch, and she is approached by some people who say, hey, we have 3 young witches living with us and we need you to teach them. And so she decides to accept that offer, and she goes teach them. It's very cute. It's very found family. The kids in it are very sweet, and there's a little bit of stakes, not super high stakes, but not low enough stakes that you're bored. And overall, I think it's a great book. I think it's very fun. It's very cozy, and I like the general vibe of it quite a bit. The romance in it is cute, besides that one sex scene, because that's gross. But other than that, the romance in it is really cute, and I enjoyed rereading it. It was just a fun little breezed through it, and enjoyed it. The last book that I read was a graphic novel, which is very new for me. It was Sheets by Brenna Thumler. I heard about this book by listening to the Books Unbound podcast, which I discovered recently and absolutely love. I'm like re-listening to, or not re-listening because I haven't listened to it before. I'm going back and listening to like all of the episodes up until now. But yeah, they were talking about it on that podcast. And basically this book, you're following a girl whose mom recently died and whose dad is just like in the depths of grief. And so it's up to her to run the family laundromat. And she's kind of struggling because it's a lot for a teenage girl, and she's in school and she doesn't necessarily have very many friends, and she's just kind of sad and dealing with her own grief and trying to figure out how to get through this situation. And then also this little ghost named Wendell who is so adorable, and he's like a ghost. Like in this world, ghosts are like little sheets with the little eye holes, and they're just so cute. And he comes from the land of ghosts and comes to the laundromat, and they have a little friendship, and it's just adorable. There's a little, again, very low stakes, but there are some stakes that just make you like, oh, what's going to happen? But this book was so wholesome. I give this 5 stars. I really, really loved it, honestly. It's so wholesome, and it was so fun to read. And I don't know if I'm really a graphic novels person. This is the 3rd one I've really ever read, to be honest. The first 2 were Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch, which I read last year by Brie Larson, and I really loved those ones. I thought they were super adorable, super cute, super fun. And yeah, I don't know if I'm like a super big graphic novels person, but I did really enjoy reading this, and I thought that it was really cute. So I guess if you have any graphic novel recommendations that are similar in the sense of like wholesome and sweet stories, let me know about it, and maybe I'll read more because it was kind of fun. I'm branching out, I'm trying new things. I don't know if I'm really going to be like into graphic novels, but I think I might try one here and there because I liked the 3 I've read so far, so, who knows what could happen. So yeah, those were the 7 books I read in January. Overall, it was a really good reading month for me. I had a lot of fun reading. I am currently reading Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. I read 4 T. Kingfisher books last year and liked all of them, and I'm liking this one so far too. I'm not super far into it though, so we'll see how it goes. And then I also am so excited because my hold for Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson came off, and that is the 2nd book, and it just came out like a few weeks ago, and I'm really excited to read it. So stay tuned for my February wrap-up to know if I actually read them and finished them and if I like them. And tell me what you read. Tell me how your reading month went. Was it good? Was it bad? Have you read any of these books, and do you agree with my ratings? And I will see you in my next video. Bye!